All right, so we are going to walk through setting up BloogBot for the first time. I've gotten a lot of questions from people that have run into issues while, downloading, installing prerequisites, or running the bot. So I will just kind of give some brief instructions on the right way to do this. So first thing you can do is go to my GitHub page and find the repo, and you're going to clone that. Once that's done, I've cloned it into this folder. Once that's done, you can start installing the prerequisites that you need. You should have Visual Studio 2022, and I can show you the components that you need. So you're going to need, this project actually has both C# projects and C++ projects in here. I'll talk about that more later, why we have to do that. But if you look at the C# projects, you'll see that they are, where is it? You'll see that they're targeting .NET 4.6.1. So we have to make sure that we have that SDK installed. So in here, I think it might actually be installed in a different version of Visual Studio because I have 3 installed. But you can see that you can install the .NET 4.6.1 SDK when you're installing Visual Studio. Again, you don't see it selected here because I think it's in like my 2019 installation is where I chose that. But it doesn't matter. As long as you have this SDK installed, this will allow you to compile the C# projects, and it will also install the .NET 4.6.1 runtime, which you need to actually run the application because you need to have the CLR installed on your computer to use this program. So make sure that you have that. You should also choose, if you go back to the solution again, in the C++ projects, you'll see that we're using version 143 of the platform toolset for C++. So I think that you can see that. Yeah, basically this is what you want. Just get the latest build tools for Visual Studio 2022 C++, and that will allow you to compile those C++ projects. I'd also just recommend, make sure you have this selected, because these are, a lot of these components are going to be useful. And then I have this one selected as well. I don't know if that's entirely necessary. I've just had that for other projects that I've been working on. And that should be enough. So once you have all of that stuff installed, you can open the solution in Visual Studio and make sure that you run Visual Studio as an administrator when you do that. So we'll open the solution. We can close this. So the way that the solution is set up, you'll see that there's only one build configuration, x86. Because we're going to be injecting this bot into a 32-bit application, we want to compile all of these projects as 32-bit. So you can see in here, for all these projects, the platform target is x86. And it's going to be the same for the C++ projects as well. So to briefly talk about the project structure here, a lot of the core functionality here is in this project, the BloogBot project. But the way that this project actually works is the entry point here is Bootstrapper. And if we look at what this does, essentially what it's going to do is it's going to launch wow.exe, and the path to your wow client is here in Bootstrapper settings. It's going to launch wow, and then it is going to bundle up the loader assembly, which is compiled from this project right here. And it's going to allocate memory in the wow process, and then it's going to write the loader assembly into the wow process. And then it's going to basically use create remote thread to start execution of this of this assembly. And then, so that's really all the Bootstrapper project is doing. So what the loader does, if we look at that, we're not going to go through all of this in detail, but essentially what this is doing is it's really just bootstrapping the common language runtime, the CLR, inside the WoW process. The reason we need to do this is because we're using C# and specifically WPF for the UI, and that depends on the CLR being available in the process. Now, you know, if you were just building a C# application from scratch, that would all be handled for you. But because we're injecting this into an older C++ assembly, the CLR is not going to be there. So we need to make sure that it is. So what this library does is first it bootstraps the common language runtime inside the WoW process, and then it's actually going to, where is that now? I forget exactly where it is. So yeah, here's where we start the CLR host. Here we go. So, and then we're going to call this DLL location is, where is that? I forget exactly where this is, but what's going to happen is inside BloogBot here, we have this is the entry point to our UI. And basically what we're doing is we're going to launch this executable inside the WoW process. And that's what loader does. So Bootstrapper starts, it injects loader into the WoW process, then loader is what loads our WPF UI here. And that's how this gets started inside the WoW process. So this is basically the entry point to the main bot application. Once you have this Bootstrapper loader flow working, you really should never have to touch Bootstrapper project or loader. These should just work. As you modify the bot and stuff, you'll primarily be working in this project. So this really just prompts you to attach the debugger, then it disables Warden in here, and then it launches the bot's UI. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So you're just going to build the solution. And there's two configurations. There's debug and release. So if we do BloogBot, so you'll see that everything is getting output into this bot folder. And then for release configuration, it goes into bots/release. But you'll notice that there's actually these two settings files. Where are they? In here. Bootstrapper settings and bot settings. These two JSON files. These actually live in the BloogBot project. So if we look at like bot settings here, what happens is these actually get copied into the output folder when compiling, and those are right here. And the reason I did it this way, and this is actually what gets used at runtime, is the ones that get copied into the output folder. The reason I did it this way is because there are secrets in these settings. Like for example, the database path has a password in it and stuff, and your bot tokens and all that good stuff. And so the settings files that get copied into the output folder are ignored from source control. So it was just an easy way for me to, not accidentally commit secrets back to the repo. So that's why that happens. But what that means is if you need to update these, and you'll need to like add a database path and add a Discord bot token if you want. You just want to be modifying the ones in the bot folder, not the one in the BloogBot folder. And the ones in the output folder are actually included in the solution items here. So like debug and release, they each have their own settings files. So yeah, that's where you can find that stuff. But as a prerequisite to running the bot, before you can actually fire this up, you need to go and update the database path. This has kind of caused a lot of confusion, but the reason that there's a database dependency here is because the bot has a lot of like state and settings that like for example, when you create a grinding profile, you'll walk around and save points, and then that needs to get saved, persisted somewhere. So, you could imagine just having like a flat text file for that. But when I was working on this more a couple years ago, I wanted to share that data with a bunch of my friends that were also working on the project at the time. So we decided to just use a shared database, and I used Azure SQL. More recently, Eric from Discord has beefed this up a little bit, where it now supports SQLite. If you don't want to like go create an Azure account and all that stuff, you can just use SQLite. I haven't actually tested this, but Eric did, and he said it works. So give that a try. There's also some code that now, this is something Eric did as well, where it when the bot starts, it looks at which database type you have, and it will run this SQL script, either SQLite or T-SQL, to actually bootstrap the database tables and with the right schema and everything. So that should just work automatically for you. So really all you need to do is, I think in this case, the database path is only necessary if you're using MS SQL. I think that it defaults to using some local database file if you're using SQLite. So yeah, if you're using the Azure SQL, just come update the database path. You just need to create the database in your Azure account, and then grab the connection string and put it here. Discord bot token, just by default this is turned off, but if you want, you can turn it on and add create a Discord bot and add the token here. And really what this does is the bot will integrate with Discord, where like it will, for example, report a message if you get teleported by a GM, or if you find a blue or purple item, or when you level up, just kind of fun stuff like that. You can also, it goes the other way, where you can actually control the bot from Discord with like bang commands, so you can tell it to start and stop. But this is all optional. If you just leave this set to false, nothing, it'll just ignore all that. And then these also need to be updated if you're using Discord integration. The rest of this stuff is actually controlled through the UI, so you really won't have to do anything with that. So once you have that stuff updated, you can set the Bootstrapper project as your startup project, and then obviously point your Bootstrapper settings to your WoW executable, and from there you can start. And so what's going to happen here, you'll see that it says attach a debugger now to wow.exe if you want to debug loader, and it's actually going to wait 10 seconds. So, and then it says debugger not found, and then it prompts us to attach a debugger. So I wanted to walk through this flow more specifically so you can understand what's happening. But this loader project, if you think about the flow of what's happening, is, remember, Bootstrapper launches wow.exe and injects loader. And the tricky thing is, if we don't add that 10-second delay, it's difficult for us to actually debug this library, because it will already have executed, like by the time we get a chance to, go attach debugger to wow.exe, it will already have run through the loader, which bootstraps the CLR and launches the main UI. So when you're in debug configuration now, there is some code in loader that actually here prompts you to attach a debugger and then waits for 10 seconds. So if we just like set a breakpoint here now, let's run through this. So we're going to launch this. Okay, and then we'll go over here and we will attach wow.exe. And then we should see this breakpoint get hit now. Yeah, okay. So there's that, and then you can step through the code. This is useful if there are certain problems that people have had, like if you don't have the right version of .NET installed on your machine, this loader library will fail, and this is useful if you need to figure out what's going on here. So like if you, like usually what will happen is if you set Bootstrapper to start up and launch it and you see wow start, but then like it just closes and nothing happens, there's probably something wrong with loader. So go ahead and debug this. Otherwise, if the bot gets to the next part, then loader is working fine. So we'll start this up again. So we're just gonna wait, not do anything here. Okay, so this prompt right here, this is in, basically the WPF application, that is right here. So if we're set to debug configuration, it's gonna say, prompt us to attach a debugger. And that is what you're seeing right here. So if we set a breakpoint here and do yes debug, and we're gonna choose Visual Studio, now you'll see we are inside the bot's primary WPF application. So this is how you would debug the main application once it's running. So we'll just hit continue for now. And at this point, you'll see the bot's UI pop up, and now we're all good. The bot's running. So you'll see here that there's this Warden message, module scan hooked. So the next important thing to talk about is in here, Warden disabler. What this actually does is it hooks Warden's primary functions. The three that it hooks are the module scan, the memory scan, and the page scan. So the module scan is, we'll talk about that first, that's the most straightforward. Basically, when you inject a bot into the WoW process, that bot assembly will be included in the module headers of the WoW process. And what the Warden module scan does is the authors of the WoW client knew that there should only be, a certain discrete list of assemblies or modules listed in those headers. And so if they see anything that shouldn't be there, you'll get flagged. So basically what they do in the WoW client, what it's using to actually get this list of modules is it's using these Win32 APIs, module 32 first and module 32 next. And these are just functions in the Windows API. And so basically we're just hooking those and, fooling Warden. If they find something that they shouldn't, we just detour it. So that's what these two do. And you'll see that worked, right? Module scan hooked. But what you'll often see, I'm on Turtle WoW right now, but what you'll often see on other servers is that they also implement page scan and mem scan. It seems like Turtle doesn't, which is why we don't see these messages here. And that's fine. That just means they're not using it. But what page scan and mem scan do is Warden will look to see if you've modified any memory in the WoW client. There are known hacks, like for example, you could modify memory at this location to implement a teleport hack or something, and they know where those are and they scan memory for those specific byte patterns. And if they are different, then your account will get flagged. So the way that we've handled that is it's a bit complicated. I don't think we're going to go into all of the detail about how this works, but essentially what Warden does is when you connect to the server, it actually, hold on, you know what? I take that back. Let me just show you something real quick, because Warden actually gets sent down at this point, right, when you connect to the server, okay? Yes, and so normally you would see, like if we just go to disable Warden internal, when the server sends the Warden module down to the client, we know the first 5 bytes of these functions, the page scan and mem scan functions. And so as soon as we connect to the server, we look for these byte patterns in memory. And if we find them, then we go into here. And then, for example, we will say, it'll say page scan module found in memory, continuing with hook, and then eventually it'll say page scan hooked. And same with mem scan. You'll notice we don't actually see that here, and that's because the Warden module that was sent from the server to the client did not include these functions, and that means that they're actually not using them. These are actually, like, from what I've seen, there's a database on the server where you can implement different Warden scans. And you can go see that if you dig around in the VMangos code base, for example. And if those databases don't have any scans configured for menscan and pagescan, the server will not send down those functions. So basically, because we don't see those, it just means that they're not using them. So that's fine. But other servers, you'll see those messages that they're hooked. Cool. So I think that's pretty much all there is to say about Warden at this point. There's been a lot of debate in the Discord server about this, but just general rule of thumb is don't use this bot on an account you care about. Even if you're not caught by Warden, there are a lot of ways that people can actually figure out that you're botting pretty easily. So just use this at your own risk is the one disclaimer I'll give you. Cool. So that's it for Warden. Now, next we should probably talk about just kind of how the bot is architected. You'll see here that there are a bunch of bots in this dropdown. So each of these are actually a separate project. So if we look in the bots project, you'll see these. And if we look at the structure of these, each of them has a class that implements this abstract class, bot, and then also the iBot interface. But these are actually using, I think I actually wrote about this in my blog. Let's double check. I forget where this is exactly. Okay, yeah, I think it's in this article, number 11, but I also talk about here in chapter 16. But essentially what this is using is it's using this MEF managed extensibility framework, which is kind of like a plugin library for C#. So that's what this export type of is, where basically what happens is these projects all compile down to a DLL, and those DLLs get parsed by the bot at runtime. And the nice thing about that is if I want to go make a change, let's say I'm like working on the Beastmaster Hunter combat rotation, okay? So that's in here. And if I want to like make a change here, just, do something like this, then I can just build this project. Oh yeah, it stopped debugging. I can build this project, and then I can go, oh shoot, sorry, hold on, I'm gonna have to, yeah, okay. Yeah, so the nice thing about this is if I have Beastmaster Hunter selected, I can make a change, and then I can rebuild it, or build rather, and then go in here and click reload bots, and then go select my Beastmaster Hunter again, and it'll have the updated code from this assembly. So this is nice. So when you're iterating on a combat rotation or something, you don't have to like close down the entire bot and reconnect and all that stuff every time you want to make a small change. So that just allows you to speed things up. But otherwise, I think in terms of the actual more detail about how the architecture works, I'd encourage you to read through these. The bot uses a state machine to manage different states that your bot can be in. For example, they'll start in the grind state, and then they'll look for a target. They'll enter the move to target state. Then they'll enter the combat state, loot state, heal state, all that stuff. And the bot's main loop is in, I think it's in bot.cs. You'll see like start, where is it, start? Yeah, so like when you click start in the bot here, it basically calls this function, and then it goes into start internal. And this is just a big while loop essentially. And it's gonna check for certain things, like it checks for, like for example, if the bot is stuck, it checks if the player's dead, then it tries to resurrect, and then it just pops and pushes states accordingly off the stack. and then it'll check it like if you need to repair, for example, checks if your inventory is full and you need to sell. But eventually what it's going to do is at the end of this, it just calls update on the current state that's at the top of the stack. So really this is just a big loop that's calling update on the current state. And then the bot's logic determines whether to push states onto the stack or pop states off of the stack. But ultimately it's just calling update. So all of the states implement this interface, and you'll see that this is super simple. It just is a single function update. So that's kind of how the state machine works, and it's all built using polymorphism. So it's pretty easy to add new states. But I wanted to talk more about just the overall like high level features of the bot, because that has also caused some confusion. So when we first get in here, let's just like log into one of these characters. So I'll just run through quickly like what how the bot works and how you can use it. The first page, these are basically like safety nets for if you're AFK or grinding and you're not paying attention or something, where if you ever get teleported, like for example, if a GM teleports you to prison, if this is selected, it'll actually kill the bot and send a message to Discord. These work the same way if you're stuck in a position for, over, I forget, how does that work? I think it's like 5 minutes or something. This will fire. And if you're ever in the same state, bot state, for more than 5 minutes, it'll stop the bot and this will fire. So these are just kind of like safety nets there. There's also this one, if a player's been targeting you for 7 seconds or 15 seconds, it'll warn you after 7 and it will actually stop the bot after 15. And this is a player proximity check where if a player is following you around and watching you without targeting you, this will stop the bot. So just some ways just to prevent being caught. But again, like just be careful, you're going to get caught eventually if you use this unattended. So then here, this is just kind of diagnostic debugging information where it will show you, like here, you'll see that when I target something, it pops up with all this stuff. Shows me my current position. As I move around, that'll update. It shows me the range to the target, target position, all that good stuff. This is just mostly for informational purposes. And this is just a log that shows you various stuff about the bot. So like if we reload bot, you'll see if that pops up here, you can clear it. I'll go over these buttons. Reload bots is what I described before, where if you make changes to a bot and you want to reload it, you can just click that. Blacklist target. This actually stores these in a database. So like if you click on this mob and do blacklist target, you'll see it's successfully blacklisted, and then I can click it again, target already blacklisted, remove them from blacklist. So now the reason that I added this feature is because like there are certain servers that are super janky, and like there will be a plane strider that's like way down in the ground and it's impossible to ever kill it, but the bot will like try to target it and just stand here and glitch out. So in those cases, just target the mob and blacklist it, and then that mob will never be included in targeting after that. Similarly, you can use it for like if there's a mob that like one elite that's on the edge of an area you want to hang out in, you can blacklist it so you'll never target it, that kind of stuff. And then test is actually just a button. Every bot implements this. Where is it? Yeah, so there's a test function in right here. So this one just does nothing, but this is just like if you want to quickly test out like, oh, I wonder what like this function does, or like so it's like something like this, If you want to see what this little function does, you could just save this, reload, and then click test, and it'll basically just execute this function. So it's just kind of a way of quickly testing ad hoc functionality. In settings, the food and the drink you select will determine how the bot heals after combat. And as soon as you run out of food or drink, the bot will run back to town and replenish that. Targeting, these are pipe separated lists of strings, and you basically, if you only want to target plane striders, you can include that here. And let's say if you leave it empty, you want to target everything, but you never want to fight like Silithids or Kodos, you can just have it look like this, essentially. So it's just a way of specifying more about what you want. The level range, this is like relative to your level. So because I have a set 2 to 2, that means I'll target mobs levels 0 to 4. So my level -2, then my level +2. These are creature types. You can uncheck the ones you don't want to fight. So right now I would never target undead, dragon, or giant. Unit reactions, if I don't want to target aggressive mobs, I only want to target neutral mobs, I can make it look like this. Loot, this will ignore different qualities of items. Like if I never want to loot poor quality items, I could uncheck this. And if I never want to loot like journal pieces from Ashenvale, I can use this, essentially. Vendor is going to be what to sell. So if you want to like keep green items and above, you can uncheck uncommon. If you want to sell green items to vendors, you can leave this checked. And then if I never want to sell healing potions or fell cloth, I can use this. This, I think you can just ignore this. This was something I was working on but never got back to. So obviously save your settings when you're done. That will actually persist it to the bot settings.json file, and they'll be persisted next time you close and reopen the bot. So in terms of the actual like functionality of the bot, let's talk about that a little bit. So I'll talk about travel paths first. So there's kind of two uses for this. We'll do Mulgore test, and then we're going to record this. And so now we're recording. You'll see player hasn't moved, holding. This is really just going to record a path from point A to point B. So let's just start moving. You'll see that it's adding waypoints down here now. Okay. And then we'll just go over here, and then we'll click save. And then we can see in here, we'll have Mulgore test. And so what this is going to do is it's going to first navigate the bot to the first point in the travel path, and then it's going to traverse the travel path. So if we go back over here and then click start, you'll notice that there's a huge delay here when I click start for the first time. The way the navigation library works is it has to, the very first time you invoke the navigation library, hold on. Yeah, okay, so you'll see this is working. The very first time you invoke the navigation library, it has to actually load all of the tiles, navigation tiles, into memory for the continent. So that's why there's that delay. It'll be a lot faster the next time you do it. I think there's a lot of opportunity to optimize that, but that's just how it works today. So this is useful if, like, for example, if you want to like navigate, like, you know, record a path running from here to Thunder Bluff along the path or something, you could use that. This is also going to be used when we talk about hotspots. You'll see that you can select a travel path, and I'll explain how those two work together. But first, let's talk about NPCs. So what you can do, the way that, actually let's talk about hotspots, because this is, I think, the most important part of the bot. So we're going to create this, and then we'll say minimum level is going to be like 2. I actually need to run to town and see what these NPCs are called. But the way that the hotspots work is when you want to grind, you have to choose a hotspot. So you'll see here I have Mulgore Plain Striders selected, but we're going to create a new one. So if we go to hotspots, you should really make sure that you select all of these when you're creating a hotspot. It's very important because, for example, the innkeeper, this just has to be somebody that sells food and drink. So that's going to be this person. So we will try to find her, Connie. And it's organized by faction first. So where is... I really need to add a some sort of search to this. Let's see if I can find it. As we can add her. Am I blind? Maybe. Let's see. Can I add her? Innkeeper, Horde. NPC already exists. What? Okay, let me look again. Softwares, what? Okay, that's bizarre. Huh, okay, that's fine. You know what, we will actually just... Let's see. We'll just pick a different character for now. Oh, I'm sorry, I saw it. Okay, I'm just blind. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so there we go, right at the end. Connie Sock Priest. So we'll pick her for the Innkeeper. And then for the repair vendor, we have to pick somebody that can repair items. Because if our equipment breaks, the bot needs to be able to run back to town to repair stuff. I don't know where. I have no idea who repairs here. Is it somebody over here, maybe? Yeah, armor and shield crafter. That's probably a good one. So we'll pick this dude, Bronk. Bronk, Steel Rage, okay, there you go. And then ammo vendor. If you're playing a hunter, you will want to play somebody or find an NPC that sells ammo because you need to replenish your ammo occasionally. I think that might be this person again. Maybe. Yeah, okay, so we'll pick Connie again for ammo vendor. And then travel path. So I'm gonna leave this blank for now, but here's where you would want to pick a travel path. So let's say I want to create a hotspot for grinding over here. But let's say that like this whole area is filled with elite mobs. What I can do is I can first record a travel path that goes like down and around and up, right? It avoids that dangerous area in the middle. And that way when the bot is traveling from town to the hotspot and back, you know, for example, it needs to go back and sell items and repair occasionally, it will always traverse this safe travel path going back and forth. So that's where you would want to choose this. If you don't choose one, it will just take the shortest route. So that's what we want to do in this case. And then the faction, I forget exactly why I added this. I don't remember. I don't know if it matters too much. You'll have to dig through the code and see what it does. And then safe to grind, I think is... I'm pretty sure these features were I added when I was trying to do like ad questing and stuff to the bot. I don't think it matters too much anymore, but if you want to use the hotspot for grinding, just choose this. So now we have, before we save, we have to actually record the hotspot. And what this, how this works is we're just going to record, and then we want to add a couple waypoints. So we'll just add one waypoint here, and then we'll go over here and add another one. And then what this does is the bot will kind of bounce back and forth between these waypoints at random, looking for targets. So as soon as it finds a target, it'll just run straight to that mob. But let's say that there's like no mobs in range, it will start moving toward a random waypoint and constantly be looking for targets. So you kind of want to just kind of add a couple waypoints spread around the general area that you want to grind at. So I think this is probably enough. We'll just do 4. And then we're going to save. So that worked. And then we will go, Yeah, so NPCs basically just, you'll need to add those before you can create the hotspot, because they'll, they won't show up in this list unless you've added them through the UI here. Power level, this is kind of an experimental feature. We're not going to talk about that right now. So let's go back here. We're going to choose, I think it was Mulgore test, and I think it was 2. Yeah. So it's going to be organized by the minimum level that you chose. And so this is the one we just created, Mulgore test. And let's make sure our settings look good. We'll just choose all unit reactions. We'll choose poor loot. Okay. So you just want to make sure that you have the right profile selected. Doesn't really matter what kind of warrior we pick because we don't have any talents yet, but it will matter eventually. And then we can save our settings and then we can click start. You can see the first thing it does is finds a plane strider and then goes to attack it. It's going to use heroic strike. That's all that it really will do right now. Okay, I think that pause and beep is actually because we have, I think we turned on some of these player proximity warnings, so we probably just want to turn those off. But yeah, this is pretty much how it should work. The bot's going to kill stuff and it's going to loot. There was no loot on that one, but it's going to kill and loot pretty much until its bags are full. It'll go back to town and sell. Or if it needs food, or if it needs to repair. If it dies, it'll run back, resurrect, and keep grinding. So I think the best way to actually get into working on this is create a new profile, or you can work on an existing one. So in the case of like Arms Warrior, we can kind of walk through high level what this does. So each bot implements a combat state, and I've tried to build this bot in such a way that it makes it pretty easy to contribute. There's actually a base class called Combat State Base, which does a lot of the stuff that all classes would do. So if you just kind of look through what this does, this will try to backpedal if you're too close. This will check line of sight. This is a bit of an issue. Line of sight is kind of janky. It seems like every server implements it differently, so your mileage may vary with spellcasters. It'll see if something else grabbed the mob before we could get to it. Right? Makes checks to make sure that the correct target is set, checks to make sure we're facing the target, checks that we're in range of the target if we're melee. All that good stuff is kind of handled in this base class. There's also some public methods. Try cast spell with different signatures. This has range, right? Min range, max range, and then try cast spell internal rather. That's just what these two call. And then there's also try usability, which is more for like non-spellcasters like warriors or rogues or whatever. So if we go back to the warriors combat rotation, it's very straightforward. We just call the base update, which handles all that other shared stuff we just looked at. And then we're just using try usability. So, and then you'll see that this method takes a resource required equals 0, and then a condition, which those both default to 0 and true. And then it also takes an action as a callback. So like, for example, this one, Blood Rage is a racial, it has no cost. So we don't change the required resource, we just default it to 0. But we do set the condition to the target should have more than 50% health, right? We don't want to blow this long cooldown if the mob is like almost dead. So that's what that's for. You can see we try usability with overpower, and this requires 5 rage. So we use 5 there. And then the condition is player.can overpower. Overpower is only activatable after you dodge, and we don't want the bot to sit here spamming some overpower ability that it can't use. So we're explicit that the condition should, we should only try to cast the spell if the player can overpower. So that's pretty much how this works. The action is if we want to execute a callback after we cast a spell. I can't think of an example of that off the top of my head. But if you just read through one of these profiles and look at what these functions do on the base class, it should be pretty self-explanatory about how you would want to modify it. So, there's some fun in optimizing this, like, thinking about what order to cast spells, what conditions to cast the spells in, that kind of stuff. And that's a great way to get into working on the bot if you don't have a ton of programming experience. The deeper guts of the bot are going to be in the BloogBot project. So, for example, trying to think of some important classes like repository and the classes that implement this, or rather inherit from this. iRepository. This is where the database interaction happens. So, when we save hotspots, load hotspots, this probably shouldn't require too much changing. A lot of the good stuff is either in game or AI. So there are certain states that are shared between all the bots, like for example, loot state. Doesn't matter which combat profile you're using, the loot state should generally be the same. So you can take a look through these to see how these work, and it's very easy to debug and step through all these to see how they work. A lot of the internals of the WoW client are in this game folder. So for example, there's the WoW's object hierarchy, where I think everything inherits from WoW object. This is abstract. So for example, there's like a WoW unit class, and then the player inherits from the WoW unit class. WoW player inherits from WoW unit, which inherits from WoW object. So there's kind of this object hierarchy that you can look through. But a lot of the functions that the bot will use, that your bot will use, like for example, if you go back to the arms warrior and look at the combat state, you'll see that this like player can overpower, or rather, let's look at this one, target health percent. This is a better one. You'll see that this actually is on WoW unit. And all it's doing is it's calculating health divided by max health. And these are retrieved from reading memory of the game client. They read memory using the memory manager. You can look through this to see how it does. It's basically just, doing some pointer dereferencing. So that's kind of how your bot can get information about the world around it, is by using the properties on WoW unit or WoW player or WoW object or whatever. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth talking about. Do join Discord if you have questions, so that you'll see the link right here. Other good resources. If you want to learn more about how the bot works and how I built it, you can read through these 25 articles here. There's some good detail in here about how this works. Cool, that's it. Yeah, if you have questions, join the Discord and come hang out.